So we started designing just audio circuits in general around January of 2020. That's kind of what we consider like the inception of Poison Noises. What it ended up being originally actually was in this room that we're sitting in right now. This used to be my drummer's room, and he had this infatuation with fuzz pedals at the time, and I remember we were just having this conversation. He'd have three of the same pedal plugged into each other in a row, and he'd be like, "This one sounds different. This one sounds different. This one sounds different." And I'd be like, "I don't think you understand how simple these circuits really are. Like they're really like some of them are like less than 10 parts, And then one day I just kind of like decided myself, I'm like, let me see if I can just put something like this together to really just like explain how simple it is. And I just went online. I looked for like where the best distributor for audio components was, and I found something that was super cheap. I was able to get all the components I needed for under $1, and it was an extra $1 for shipping. So I was like, if this is the amount of money it takes for me to prove a point, I'm willing to spend $2. So I ended up putting this thing together, and at this time I was the store manager at Guitar Center in Albany, and I got off my shift at 5 o'clock. I came here with my girlfriend, and we're sitting down. There's a package on the stairs. It's a little tiny package. It's full of components, and I was just like, all right, let me see if this is as easy as I think it is. I kind of just start putting stuff together based on my knowledge of electronic components that I had from when I was in college, and I put it together. And I have this pile of circuits, like a circuit in my hand. It's just like this horrible looking spider web thing. And I'm just looking at it, and it dawns on me, I'm like, I don't have an amp in my house right now. I can't even test this because one of my amps was getting repaired. Another one was like at the studio or something like that. So I end up taking this thing like in my hands, and I run back to the store. And everyone's like, what are you doing here? You just left. And I go, I gotta try something real quick. I gotta try something. I plug this in, and we just turned it on. It just like fired up right away. And it was like the gnarliest, like deep, grody fuzz tone like we had ever heard, because it was just an open circuit with nothing else on it. And everyone was like, what the heck is that? And I was like, I gotta do something with this. I gotta figure out. So then the game became, how small can I make it, right? Because it's like this little rat's nest thing I have in my hands. I have it somewhere. I don't know where it is now. But so we end up getting it into like a little box, like, I don't know, about the size of like 2 quarters put together. Like it was tiny. And we actually threw it under the pickguard of that Strat that's behind you, and made it so you could like operate it by a push-pull pot on the knob. So it's just like a guitar, but then you pull a knob on it, and like it just goes wild out of control fuzz. And it was like this whole idea originally we had. We weren't even thinking pedals. We were just thinking onboard circuits for guitars. Like, how can we fit all these effects underneath the pickguard so these guitars are like sleepers that like they just seem like a regular guitar, and then you pull a button on it and it just like goes wild out of control. And then we started to realize that it was a lot harder to convince people to let us take their guitars apart than it was for us to just put these things in an enclosure and build them. And that was the first pedal, and that was the Gluttonous Fuzz. And it was just a big fat guy eating a hot dog. I don't know where we got the idea from originally. I think we just liked the name Gluttonous Fuzz. But yeah, that was the first pedal. We put a volume knob and a tone knob on it, and just started kind of like asking people if they were interested in it. And yeah, that was the first one. We actually do a reissue of it now that's got like way more bells and whistles. We did like 4 different iterations of that pedal, and we still sell it today. So that was kind of like how it all started originally. And then the pandemic hit, and we kind of had to like make the decision, like, are we gonna try to make this happen? We'd gone through a couple of months, and we were still kind of just making the same thing with like minute changes, and then eventually it was my old boss, who's now my partner in all this, Connor, who was just like, he's like, how much does this cost you to make? And I was like, well, the first one cost me less than $1. And he was like, okay, I don't think you realize how ridiculous it is, the amount of margin there is in this kind of thing. Fuzz pedals go anywhere from like, they'd be like $80 for a big muff to like some vintage fuzz stuff can be like in the hundreds of dollars. You know what I mean? So he's like, we can like market this, like we can sell it like affordably and still make money off it, just doing it in your apartment. I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. So it was pretty much cost us like, I'm trying to think of a good, it cost us 1 stimulus check to kind of start the business, is effectively what it did us. So and that's what we did. And by the time May came around and Guitar Center wanted us to go back and work the retail world, and I didn't have as much time on my hands to put the stuff together anymore, I kind of had to make the choice. And it was between, working retail in the height of the pandemic or staying at home and trying something. And so we went with the latter, and here we are now. So only about a year and a half into our company's life, and I'm still doing the same thing, and it's great. When we first started trying to, let's say, establish ourselves, we figured the easiest and most effective way to do that would just be to have a famous person playing them. And it's kind of like a fake it till you make it thing, where it's like, if we have some famous people who think our pedals are good, that might entice some other people to do it. And we've been successful with that notion. There was this one pedal that had some controversy going around at the time with the creator, and Guitar Center had stopped carrying that particular pedal, and a lot of other local stores had also. So we wanted to make something that kind of did the same thing but better. We didn't want like a direct copy, but we wanted to be able to get that same sound for people. And what's funny enough, saying how much my roommate had an influence on this at the time also, I used to own this pedal that had all this buzz around it, and then I sold it to him. And then right after I sold it to him, everyone kind of like canceled that pedal. Everyone was like, "Ooh, we don't want to see those on boards or anything anymore," because that guy's they didn't really agree with his views. And so it was almost like a feeling of guilt that I had to make him a version of this pedal that he could still play. So I developed it, and that's actually what we call the Crook now, which is probably our best-selling pedal. I think what we have right now. That's the one we definitely have the most famous people playing. So this is what we did, and this sounds like it'd be some kind of brilliant strategy, but it really wasn't at the time. So we looked at that pedal that got canceled, and we looked at all the famous people who used them, and then we made the pedal, and then we just messaged everyone on Instagram. And we were just like, hey, we think you might like this overdrive we're making, because it's just like the overdrive that they've been using for 10, 15 years, So, and it was a silly idea when we had it, and all of a sudden, we messaged, I remember he's sitting on one end of the couch, I'm sitting on the other. He's just like, I'm like, all right, your job, you get me everyone, you go search everyone's Instagram handle, and I'll just start sending messages. And so he was just reading me handles, and I was just copying, pasting messages originally. And then I realized how many people are on there are actually people I'm really big fans of. So the messages are getting a little more personalized. And all of a sudden I'm sending personalized messages to all these different famous people about what albums I like that they've done and how I think they would like this pedal and all this stuff. And we started getting tons of responses. So the first person who responded was Brendan Benson of the Raconteurs. And me and my roommate Brandon at the time were enormous fans of his, and he'd been just listening to their record Consoler the Lonely on repeat for months, and he was super interested in the idea. And Jack White's also in that band, and I'm a big fan of Third Man Records, his label and everything like that, and where they press vinyl there. I'm also a big vinyl enthusiast, so they're like, yeah, send the pedal there, send it to the studio. And I was like, oh, that's just cool by itself. I'm sending stuff over to Third Man, you know what I mean? So we send it over, and he does he goes on Instagram and he does a whole unboxing video for it, and he opens it up and he's stoked, talking about how much he loves the name and the art and how stoked he is and everything. And then after the video ended, he messaged me. He's like, this thing is incredible. It really is. And I was like, awesome, cool. And then it was the next day we got two messages. We got one from Lincoln Parrish, Cage the Elephant, and one from Matt McJunkins, who's in every cool band ever. He was in Pussifer, he was in Eagles of Death Metal. Actually got to see them on tour with the Eagles of Death Metal. He just played on Poppy's new record. He's on so much cool stuff. And he's a bass player. So I was like, oh cool, we got a bass player to play the pedals now. But both those dudes were like, yeah, absolutely, send us one. So now they're both getting Crooks too, you know what I mean? And then, we just we're sending them out to all these people, and it's really cool. I mean, most recently, we sent one to Andy Hull from Manchester Orchestra, which is my favorite band of all time, and I'm gonna go see him in 2 weeks play my overdrive live in front of a bunch of people at the House of Blues. That's the coolest thing in the world. You know what I mean? That's the part to me that feels like, wow, this feels successful, and this feels good, and this feels awesome. We got some more pedals we're gonna release this year. Some digital stuff, some analog stuff, some stuff some half-baked ideas I have. We will have more stuff. Our plan is to get them in as many mom and pop stores as we possibly can. We're reaching out to people that are all over the country at this point, just anyone who would want to take it, because we just want the reach to go, And some more demo videos and stuff for sure. Talking about maybe doing some more instructional stuff. We're talking about growing the YouTube channel into just being something kind of fun, you know what I mean? We have great admiration for dudes like Josh Scott from JHS Pedals and Brian Wampler with his Chasing Tone podcast, and people who just make great pedal content. We kind of want to be a part of that.